All right, let's get started. Third and final session of the evening. Want to go ahead and get started because I'm getting a lot of pressure from the team that we're running behind schedule tonight. So I hope you've all had a chance to get some more food, grab a couple beverages. Please stick around. We've got some exciting things to talk about. And actually, to kick this one off, I'm just going to kick it over to my guy, Chris. Nope, I'm not going to do that.
No, we can't. No, we can't. No, I just set me up right.
All right. There have been a few things that we've talked about since we started Keystone, a few things that we've talked about since we started really developing the community. And, you know, when you're trying to find the right way to bring certain elements of kind of community development to market, you really want to find the right partners. You really want to find the right way to do it to have an impact. And we tried something about a year ago. We tried to deliver on First Fridays, and we just kind of generally threw it out and said, hey, let's just do First Fridays here. And it was okay, but we didn't do it again, if that says anything about how it went. But we knew there was a thing there, that we knew there was some element. We had done some work, and I'll talk about that in a minute. We had done some work back in 2018 with a group of students from the design school at the University of Kansas about ways to really use place to drive community development, and drive awareness of what we were doing here at Keystone around First Fridays. And I think we want to pick that back up. So that was kind of the genesis of this conversation. Now, this is the kicking it over to you piece. One of the things that was also going on and has been going on recently is the collaboration work that we've been doing with civic organizations in Kansas City and other organizations in Kansas City have definitely been picking up. The pace has been picking up. I think that we've been open for a year. We're starting to see, more traction, and more people are starting to realize the opportunity with the space, the place, the community that's developing here. And so that's what we're here to talk about tonight, is kind of where one of those collaborations is kind of taking form, and kind of what we see happening. I think a lot of our community is a little maybe not as aware of what the Tech Council does. So I'm going to have you guys, Craig, I think most people know you, but I'm still going to make you introduce yourself. So if you guys want to introduce yourself really quick, and then we'll jump into some questions and get some background on the Tech Council and go from there.
I'm about to say, did you want me to expand on what you just said, or just do the introduction and then kind of?
No, what I just said, and then introduce yourself. Or introduce yourself.
And like while we're here, or do you want me to go into deep into while we're here, or all of that?
Okay. You freestyle a little bit.
I mean, all right. Fick it. So for those who don't know, my name is Craig Moore. I am the founder of Black Excellence Incorporated. We are a professional development organization specifically for Black professionals, with the goal to help them find opportunities to either grow their professional trajectory, help them find how to navigate the ecosystem as being a founder of a nonprofit or a for-profit, or to help them grow and engage their new wealth into the ecosystem of Black professionals here in Kansas City. As Kevin said, we've been partners for quite some time here in Keystone. And, I think the other side of that coin is that one thing that Kevin and I has always talked about is how do we shift people from going to a living wage to a thriving wage? And to do that, we feel like, or from my own personal philosophy and a lot of what Black Excellence has been moving towards, it's in the space of emerging technology and high growth startups or entrepreneurship. And when Kevin laid out the study that the group from KU did, and in talking about what we're trying to do with First Fridays, that was just the best opportunity, I feel like, to really engage that. And the Tech Council was probably the easiest partner to bring in to kind of make this actually go into fruition. So just super excited to be here to tell you all about what we have planned, and kind of go from there.
Erin, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey, everyone. I'm Erin Christensen, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the KC Tech Council. The Tech Council is a industry advocate, I'll say, for the tech industry, and we'll kind of talk about what that means, because I feel like well, we'll talk about it later, I guess. But for the tech industry and within the Kansas City region, I would say. And so we do that through a few different ways. One is policy advocacy. We're not a lobbyist, we're an advocate, advocacy group from your former speaker. Through workforce development initiatives, and then also just overall identifying ways to connect peers within the industry. So we have about 200 or so member organizations of the Tech Council, and I can talk later about what we do to support those organizations. But I think the common, I think the surprise that people hear or that they're not aware of is that the majority of that membership, which is a really good representation of just overall tech in Kansas City, are small to mid-sized companies. It's not, typically who you think of when you think of tech in Kansas City. And so it's important for us to continue to be able to support the work of, those organizations that are continuing to grow, that are the ones who are, really adding to headcount and just overall, economic growth in Kansas City.
So Aaron, I'm gonna start and stay with you for a few of these questions, because I think it's important to kind of establish who the Tech Council is and maybe go into a little bit more detail here. I used to be involved with the Tech Council, and it's fascinating to me as a trade association with 200 members in this region, but it's not a trade association in a trade like in an industry segment that people would identify. So when you say tech, help us understand like how the Tech Council views, that word, and views this member association of tech, because you heard Victor. I think Victor said it well, and I've heard people at the Tech Council have said this for a really long time. It's all tech now.
Right. Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's not, just software companies. I think that's what people initially think of when they hear of tech companies. Honestly, it's more like tech employers. And when you see, the largest headcount growth within an organization, it's typically on the tech side. Maybe with outside of like healthcare, but banking, they're hiring more computer science students than they are finance students. That is a complete opposite than, they've taken a complete 180 from maybe 15 or 20 years ago. So really everything, tech touches everything, and it's how people communicate. It's how they get access to information. It's changing constantly. And so not having, a robust tech, workforce within an organization who can think innovatively, will slow the progress down of those organizations, which is why we continue to see it thrive. But tech, I think it's anywhere from cybersecurity, like what you typically think of, to software development. But now I would say advanced manufacturing. So much of like robotics and manufacturing is utilizes robotics. And if you don't have people with the skill set to be able to operate those machines, they're going to be at a disadvantage. And so it continues to grow. When you talk about tech, it really does touch everything. I mean, even physicians would say, especially surgeons would say, that there's a level of technical skill set, on the computer side when it comes to different surgical equipment that they're using. So it truly is ingrained pretty much within every industry and every profession now.
So talk to me a little bit about, you mentioned 200 members. You talk about the majority probably small to medium size. We would think of the Garmins and the Oracle Cerners and, the big tech companies in Kansas City, but there's a huge segment of your members that don't fit that big brand, that big industry kind of bill. What kind of things do you do for your members? What are some of the programs that you do for your members? But then also you talk about advocacy and some of the work you guys are doing from a policy perspective. Several years ago, you guys started producing an annual report about tech industry in Kansas City. Talk a little bit about that too.
Yeah. So in regards to just what we do for our members, we try to really be agnostic in terms of size. What we offer in terms of programming is fairly agnostic regardless of the industry that you're, or the sector, I should say. But identifying ways to connect with peers who might work in different sectors of the industry. So we have like a cybersecurity roundtable event. So we have anywhere from CIOs to security analysts or security engineers from companies like J.E. Dunn, so a construction company that still has security, they have, a whole security team, to very small, maybe 15 person headcount, in a boutique cybersecurity consulting group, to Garmin. But had it not been for, maybe that roundtable event, those peers across the industry may not have been able to have the opportunity to connect because of those sectors that they work within. You're seeing, general construction to consulting to a software company. So we try to find opportunities like that to connect peers across those, regardless of the sector that they work within, and regardless of the size of the organization. So that's one example of what we do. And then regarding, we, on an annual basis, we collect industry data that, helps us or helps guide, the work that we do. A lot of it is around workforce, but then also just overall economic impact that tech has in Kansas City and then in the states of Missouri and Kansas. And we compare it to who we would consider peer markets, or that we're typically compared to, I should say. And then also we compare it against overall US average. And, I think people are usually pleasantly surprised by how well Kansas City is performing in that area. It's, a lot of cities have somehow marketed themselves as tech hubs, but when you look at the raw data, Kansas City is absolutely outperforming them when it comes to the overall economic impact that tech has within our metropolitan area. And that's a marketing and a PR ploy for those markets, and we need to do a better job in Kansas City. So for example, you will find that Kansas City is actually more aligned with a market like Minneapolis and versus a market like Nashville or Indianapolis. So when it comes to, the economic impact that tech has and just overall job, saturation in Kansas City. We're actually ahead of Chicago. And so those are, I think, surprising statistics that we don't do I think it's the Midwest nice of us. We don't do a great job of sharing, the work and the impact that we have within the metro, but then also how it's contributing to each state's economy as well.
Now, one of the things you guys, I've seen consistently over the last several years that you've put the report out is the deficit between tech employment here in Kansas City, that there's always, it seems, thousands of open tech jobs in Kansas City. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Still accurate?
Yep. Well, it continues to grow. That deficit continues to grow. It did take a little lull, as most markets did, coming in for 2021, because we weren't sure how the market would react to the pandemic. It's definitely back up in terms of just overall job creation. But yes, there is a deficit if you look at the amount of people that we have that can do those jobs and the amount of jobs that we have in Kansas City.
This isn't several years back, the organization was called KC Next, and the move to it was under KCADC. The move to move out and move into its own organization and rebrand it and rename it, the KC Tech Council, was intentional because this Tech Council label is not unique to Kansas City. There are tech councils across the country, correct? So we're not the only one that has a tech council, and you guys are part of an organization of tech councils around the country.
Yeah. So it's called TECNA. That's tech. I need to think about it. The Tech Councils of North America, obviously and so that includes Canada. We have peers in Canada, and it's interesting to see how they're organized. Some are, they have different priorities than others. We have a pretty large emphasis in workforce development. Some don't, and that's totally fine. Some do a lot more with, policy. I would say we have a pretty strong policy arm as well. But yeah, and also I think I will say though, what makes us particularly unique, well, Missouri and Kansas, Missouri particularly unique is that a lot of states just have a state tech council. Like there's the Nebraska Tech Council, there's one in Iowa that represents the state. There's one in Minnesota, one in Wisconsin. Well, most of those states have just one, fairly major metropolitan area. Missouri has the benefit of having two on either sides of the state. So there is STL Tech and there's KC Tech. And so we have the benefit of also, being able to operate and, support what's happening in Kansas as well.
I love how you say that's a benefit. I mean, because a lot of us feel the pain of Kansas City being split and having to sort those things out between St. Louis and Kansas City on one hand in one state, but then also being split between Kansas and Missouri and not being seen as like the go-to for either state either, because they have a go-to city. Each one of them does.
Yes, because there's a smaller tech organization or tech council in Wichita as well. So it, I guess, would provide some challenges, but particularly I will say though, from a policy standpoint, we get to have more impact when it comes to policy. And, we went to DC in April and with our policy committee or members of our policy committee, that allowed us to meet with every senator from either state or their staff and representatives that represent both on the Kansas City, Missouri, metro side and on the Kansas side. So we had 8 different meetings, and that is including a commissioner for, anyway. I think in some ways we get to have a larger impact on the work that we do on a state level. Some of the more recent, I would say, impact that we had in both Kansas and Missouri is around computer science education requirements, but both states operate differently. And so in Missouri, that goes through their the legislative process. In Kansas, it's through their Board of Education. And so it just depends, but I think a benefit, and we are privileged that we do get to interact, from a policy standpoint, and I think maybe make a little bit more of an impact when it comes to policy work because we do straddle the state line.
So I'm going to go, Craig. We set this whole thing up by talking about emerging tech and the importance of emerging tech in specifically in the Black excellence, domain. The idea that these opportunities that emerging technologies present may not be as accessible or as visible. Is that accurate? Am I saying that right?
Yeah. When we think about just what happened with the pandemic, right? The pandemic has has erupted the remote work, being able to work from home. And then also, as we've seen with Gwen, how AI, artificial intelligence, has really transformed positions for those. And so when we think about those who work in, let's just say, like your General Motors or your normal factories, who might been on that line and they've been on the line for 20 plus years, just recently they have been actually using more robotics in those spaces. And so when you think about those workers where those robots are learning more and more every day on how to build that car, what happens to that surplus of workforce that does not have that opportunity to skill up to actually work on that robot or to control the space that they're in? And so to be able to help support that gap, there are onslaught of opportunities where you have like your launch codes or your Goodwill Artemis Institute or RW with Dr. Joy, who are truly targeting that workforce to help them skill up in about 18 months. You know what I mean? And they're doing it into the spaces of where, it is accessible to those workers to where they can still have their 9 to 5, but still go to these classes and be able to progress. So our goal in that space is just to be a connector. There's a lot of opportunities out there. I think it's just not visible. And so for us, we want to be able to be that platform, that safe space where you can come and say, hey, I actually just don't know about this, so that's the reason why I didn't apply.
Right.
And how can we create that language, create that community to where you can be curious, you can fail, I really don't want to say fail. You can be curious, you can learn and adapt, and be ready for the next wave of the workforce.
And the idea that wanting that job, wanting to go get that certificate, wanting to do those things, but there's a gap because I don't know enough about that industry. I don't know enough about what that is to even be interested in that job. That's one of the gaps that needs to be filled at this point in time. It's more kind of that inspiration gap than it is that education gap at this point.
Yeah, 100%. Like when just from my own personal experience, when I thought about IT, when I thought about technology, when I thought about artificial intelligence and thinking about my career, it was immediately something that I just felt like it wasn't for me, right? And it was just because there were not enough people in my community who was in that space that I can gain that comfort to learn more about, right? And so what we're trying to do is just kind of immerse those who are in those spaces to, one, help break down that language barrier, because they're just large words, but they can be simplistic things, simplistic skills. But then also, like, let's deep dive into what are your current skills that you can transfer over into this space. And it's just, all it is just about having that simple application of learning that what I'm doing over here, this is how it reflects on this side. And now I'm ready to kind of see or be a part of that impact of that change.
So you've got an organization that's full of 200 plus members that are in the technology space that probably have line of sight to some of these emerging trends, these emerging technologies. It's embedded in their business on a daily basis in many ways. You got an organization that is really trying to increase the awareness to these types of things and bring this to the community and do those types of things. And there hasn't been collaboration at this point in time. So Aaron, I want to come back to you because I've also heard the leaders of your organization, including yourself, talk very recently about a shift from a strategy perspective with the Tech Council around, hey, we serve our members, we do these things, but there's an ecosystem around us. There's this world that we live in here in Kansas City, and there's maybe opportunities for us to do more. Talk to me a little bit about what that means and how you guys have like taken that on as a strategic pillar right now.
Yeah. So I think we're still trying to figure out how that will look. But we've been very open about, wanting to identify ways to collaborate with other organizations who might operate similarly or who are part of the ecosystem overall. And, just at our last, we have an industry leadership council, which is an extension of our board of directors. And we kind of view them as like our sounding board to the industry. They meet quarterly. At our last meeting, we had 3 individuals, Craig being one of them, representing Black excellence. We had BioKansas there, BioNexus as well, and other kind of similar organizations, but doing things differently. So just giving a quick overview of who they are, what they do, and ways that our members can get involved, but also how can we share or help, promote the work that they're doing. So BioKansas has their Innovation Fest, later this summer that they're trying to continue to build up, and it's an awesome opportunity for us to get involved, and I think our members to get involved. And what does that look like? We are wanting to try to catalog, I would say, kind of peer organizations in Kansas City. And when I say peer, maybe not peer to the Tech Council, but organizations that, whether it's AFCOM for mission critical or, women in security, cataloging these, organizations to better, so we can better support our members, but also support the events that they have going on as well. And, how can we be an advocate for these groups also? So I would say we're still kind of in the early stages of, what this looks like, but we do think, we know that there's an opportunity to, work with, whether it's nonprofits or civic organizations or groups that just operate within the ecosystem to make Kansas City overall a better, a better place to be, live, work. And that could go that could go beyond, the groups that I just talked about, but even to how can we work with Visit KC so we know what conventions are coming and how can we put that on our members' radars, and how can we be involved with, with that? So we just had Society of Black Engineers here. That's that's a fantastic opportunity for, those in the STEM community to get involved. And it shocked me how some weren't aware of it. And anyway, so those are, but we're kind of in the early stages of what this looks like, but we're excited to see, what we can do with it. How can we use our position and our membership to help support others? And I think it's opportunities like this and continuing to be involved with groups like this and speaking and engaging, supporting, the events at Keystone, through our membership or through our team at the Tech Council, is important to the community.
So I'm gonna put the last dot out there and then we'll connect them. Yeah. So a while back, I think it was a couple months ago, some of you might remember, we had a session led by Hurston Fales up to talk about merging technology, the myths, the facts, and the opportunities around that. We had a very interactive exchange with the audience, very interactive. We had a lot of really good feedback. We need to bring more of that, forward in the community and so on. So I thought sessions might be a good opportunity for us to do that. And so Craig and I started talking. We were talking about the conversations that he was having with the Tech Council. They've got this member organization of all these members that have this knowledge and this experience and exposure. How can we bring these things together? So Craig, you want to talk about a little bit what we plan on doing and where we're going with this?
Yeah, for sure. I really want to kind of give a shout out to Rich because it was during a meeting that we had where he was talking about just this space of technology, right? And kind of where technology and arts meets. And, I was like, have you talked to Kevin about Future Fridays? And he was like, no, not at all. And that really is kind of what put the gas on the fire for us to kind of really push to kind of make what we're about to talk about now happen. So I just wanted to place that there. But the goal with all of the dots that Kevin is bringing together is when we're talking about emerging technology, the one thing that we realized, and I think even in the last session we talked a little bit about, there's a language barrier, right? There's a barrier that's there that just needs to be translated. And when we're talking about, especially if you're tuned into the news and you hear about emerging technology, it's usually scary stories.
Privacy. Somebody stole your credit card
this person is in God mode of ChatGPT and it's going to take over the world. You know what I mean? So it's so what we wanted to do is, one, place where the opportunity is in the workforce. Two, come in and almost in a sense translate or bring it down to layman's terms. And then three, you can actually come and experience that technology that we talked about. And so, just kind of rolling into that. So for the next, for every, fourth Wednesday?
Fourth Wednesday.
Every fourth Wednesday now, we'll be having two sessions. And that first session will be featuring hopefully a Tech Council member where they'll come in and they'll talk about
or a panel
discussion, however they want to format that. It's totally up to you guys, no pressure. But it'll just basically lay out how are they using that technology, or where do they see this technology going in the industry, and what are the opportunities that, whether you're a startup who's wanting to solve a problem, or if you're a person who wants to shift over into a new industry, what do those workforce opportunities actually look like? And then Hurston, as he mentioned, will come in under that following session during that day and basically talk about the myths, talk about the truths, and talk about the application of those technologies. So he'll break it all down, if any of those terms. So don't leave after the first session. Stay for the next session so you can get that layman's terms understanding of the emerging technology. But then in that same theme, that following first Friday, we're calling it Future Fridays. And Future Fridays will be themed after that emerging technology that we have talked about in those first two sessions. We will be featuring just an array of organizations who work in that field, some workforce spaces. Big shout out to Mind Drive. They'll be our first feature organization for the first Fridays, for the first Future Fridays. Well, they'll come in and they'll have their students here with their sculptures for sale. We'll have an NFT gallery. We'll have some AI and AR demos and opportunities for people to engage with. But the whole entire goal is to kind of have emerging technology and the arts kind of collide. We're right in the center, where right down the street from where Crossroads happens. Everybody knows about that artist community and the creative community that's down there. But then also on the other side of us, we have 18th and Vine, where First Friday flows freeze for the Black community as well. Talk about placemaking. Keystone is strategically placed in this space to where we can kind of be that bridge between those two already well-known spaces. But Future Friday's happening here, where we'll have the food trucks outside, but you can actually come in here and experience the emerging technology here with some cultural aspects to it, right? We want to make sure that and really this is targeted towards marginalized communities who do not have access to these spaces and just kind of need to see people, hear from people in their own terms so that they can be understanding and a part of the wave and not after the wave of technology like has been historically.
So fourth Wednesday, 6 o'clock, we'll do a session with the Tech Council on a specific emerging topic of maybe a technology or an industry trend, something of interest, something of relevance. We'll have knowledge shared from experts. Then Hurston breaks it down for the audience at 7 o'clock. And then within a week or two of that, the first Friday that comes up, we'll host a Future Friday event where people will be able to touch, demonstrate, see that technology or understand kind of that from a firsthand experience kind of thing. That's the breakdown of that.
100%.
And we're starting this Friday. We wanted to introduce kind of the Tech Council into the collaboration. Mind Drive has their student graduation this coming weekend, this first Friday weekend. So as Craig mentioned, they're going to be kind of our highlight for this first Future Friday. You'll get to see all their sculptures from their welding students. It's amazing work that they've been doing. And so June 28th, I think, is the fourth Wednesday.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That we'll target that for emerging tech and emerging trends. And then July 2nd. I think is the first Future Friday where we'll have maybe some presence from some of the Tech Council members, hopefully, is the goal. So, Aaron, thoughts?
No, I'm excited about it because, it's a topic, the emerging technology is a topic that we've been talking about in the Tech Council and how we can highlight it more. And I think there's some really innovative, obviously, people who work within our membership that are doing cool things that, not a lot of people know about or hear about. And it's cool to give them a platform to share it. But I think what I personally just think is cool is highlighting the intersection between art and technology or creative spaces and technology. I think Kansas City is, it has such an architecture. I consider architecture a form of art and how they use technology, but also we have the Art Institute and just, really creative organizations like Mind Drive as well and what those students are doing. So I think that I'm excited. I think that there are some really cool opportunities and people that we can feature and stories that we can tell as well. I think it's going to be a cool collaboration. So we're excited about it. Yeah.
One of the primary objectives of any innovation district, when you look at kind of the top two objectives, outcomes that we're supposed to reach, the first one is research commercialization. We got a long way to go before we have a role in that because we're still at this kind of community center phase and so on. But the second one, and the one that we try to highlight with sessions, is make innovation visible. And so I think, to your point, there is a lot of amazing work that your members do that people don't see because it happens behind the walls of those organizations. So to be able to bring that out, that's the thing I'm excited about. To be able to bring those innovations out, to be able to show those to the community, to be able to demonstrate those here, and do it during a First Friday where we already have a community that's engaged in being down here, and they're down here curious. They're down here to see new things. They're down here to experience new things, and to be able to ride that opportunity to be able to then make that innovation visible to those audiences, I think is really big. So we appreciate you being here. We appreciate the collaboration. Craig, I mean, we've been talking about this for a long time, so I know it's exciting. I'm excited about it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. We're excited. Thank you for having me and having the Tech Council. And I'm excited to see what comes from this.
Yeah, and I think what I'm really more excited about is being able to highlight this community here. There's going to be opportunities where a lot of our community will be able to showcase what they're doing, but they'll be on that same playing field as some of those small and emerging companies that are up under KC Tech Council. So being able to have that collaboration, and then also it's being ran by our community. Like, I'm super excited about that. Activating a lot of our volunteers who've been here in Keystone for quite some time. Just happy to see them get their shine and see what we can do for Kansas City next.
You highlighted an important thing that I think I overlooked talking about was the members that are under this roof will be present as well. So not only will a person have the opportunity to learn about a technology or learn about that trend, but if they're like, what's the next step? How can I get involved? I'm interested. You've got my curiosity piqued. You know, we've got Goodwill in the Bridge Technology Program, someone's first step into a tech job, first step into an opportunity. We've got Launch Code that's got the opportunity to like maybe take some person to the next step. They'll be here. They'll be able to demonstrate those things. You've got Lyrics and the opportunity to expose an entire generation, an entire population of youth that are really looking for inspiration and looking for opportunity. I mean, it's just to be able to connect those dots, but do it under the umbrella of, the credibility of those companies that people see. Like, it's like, I want to play I play baseball, I want to play for the Royals. Well, if you see these technologies, you see these trends, now you'll see the hometown teams that are really kind of driving the
100%.
Driving the train for those things, and they'll hopefully will be present, and they'll give you that kind of view of what that job can look like, what that path can look like as well. So it's gonna be fun, and I'm excited to get started. So thanks for being here, Aaron.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for being here, Craig.
I'm always here.
I know. All right. I had to say it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you.